The Jewish Week on JN1.
With just days to go before Israeli voters cast their votes on 22nd of January, the final opinion poll shows the right-wing bloc lagging at its lowest point yet in the campaign season, although incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is still expected to retain his post. Netanyahu's joint Likud-Beitenu party is predicted to win just 32 of the Knesset's 120 seats, down 10 from what the coalition currently holds, while the leftist Labour Party is expected to make a slight gain with 17. But the real surprise, according to the survey, lay in competition for third place, where Yair Lapid's centrist Yesh Atid party sidelined Naftali Bennett's religious Zionist Jewish Home Party with 13 seats to 12. But with time running out before Election Day, 15% of voters said they were still undecided, and others that they did not expect any major political shifts.
Recent polls show a relative stability within what is called the center of the Israeli electorate, with a slight shift from the right towards the center. The big question that the polls do not reveal is how many of the Israeli electorate will not show up at the polls.
Somewhat of a boring election this time around. You know, we got 34 parties, which is not unusual for Israel. In America, it's much easier. You got only 2. But out of these 34 parties, the differences between many of them are so miserably small. And I think many people that I know are still 4 days before elections. We still don't exactly know who we're going to vote for.
These elections is more or less the last elections. The results are very similar. The persons are different, but the trend, the tendencies are very much the same.
The right will win, and for me it will be a tragedy for Israel.
But while Israeli voters may still be wavering between candidates, recent surveys show that they are certain about which issues take top priority. 47% put social and economic concerns at the top of the list, while 18% thought that pursuing peace talks with the Palestinians was more salient. Only 10% agreed with Prime Minister Netanyahu that Iran's nuclear program should be the country's #1 priority.
Since the assumption is that his party will be the majority one or the largest one, and he will be asked to set up the coalition, then individual voters are figuring, okay, who will be with him in the coalition pulling in my direction? So votes are going right of Netanyahu in order to make him tougher on issues of national security and the Palestinian negotiations. And votes are going towards the center in order to pull him more into social and economic issues and make his government less neoliberal.
Turnout has slipped over the past few national elections, but for many young Israelis, this will be the first time they cast ballots, and candidates have been eager to capitalize on the arrival of a new generation of voter with their own views of what the political agenda should be.
I researched the different parties, researched the different platforms, and along the way I found out a couple of things about myself, truthfully. At the end of the day, after doing all these different things, the two main issues that are important to me personally, I think, are one, peace and security, and number two, I feel like there's been a rift in the past couple of years, couple of decades, between the citizens in Israel, and I think it's very important to try to bring everyone together, that everyone really should feel united and not divided.
I feel like the people are more unhappy than they've ever been, okay? Problems with the Palestinians we had since 1948 or even before, but the people are really unhappy because they work really hard. Living is expensive, rent is expensive, basic food is expensive, people are paying taxes, and it's just people don't feel like they're getting anything back from the government. This is why I feel these elections are going to be very big for this country.
The most important thing this year, in my opinion, is that at the very least, education in Arab schools in Israel will be under our direction and will be our responsibility, so that we may learn about our history and heritage, about the Palestinians living in Israel, and not any other heritage or history.
Another key minority in the legislative election is the fast-growing ultra-Orthodox population, which represents around 10% of all Jews in Israel. Despite only representing a fraction of voters, the Haredim carry significant political clout and have historically played the role of kingmakers, as the great majority will tend to back ultra-Orthodox parties. However, many Israeli voters are unhappy about paying taxes towards supporting Haredi communities who they say do not contribute enough to society.
The problem is that we're talking about a huge chunk of society coming downstream here that is, it's going to be unsustainable. We're not going to be able to maintain families with 10 or 15 children where both parents don't work as a lifestyle. We may not like it today, we're not going to like it in the future, but we're not even going to be able to do it in the future because we're talking about a huge chunk of the population.
With most polls reaffirming predictions that incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will remain in power after the election, analysts are pessimistic that prospects for peace talks with the Palestinians will be any brighter after the 22nd of January.
I don't think we can expect a permanent peace deal with the Palestinians. We might see an interim deal, but we may well see the Palestinians draw closer to Hamas rather than seek an agreement with Israel.
Netanyahu has come under heavy international criticism for pursuing plans to establish new settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, a move which critics say adds a further break to the peace process. Some analysts say that this is not the top priority for Netanyahu.
I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has very different focal points than Ariel Sharon, and the most important focal point for him is the Iranian nuclear program. And I don't think anything will lead Prime Minister Netanyahu to taking his eye off that ball.
Peace talks with the Palestinians were frozen in 2010 over a dispute on Israeli constructions in the West Bank. Tensions have since then become increasingly strained, following 8 days of fighting between Israeli defense forces and Hamas militants in Gaza.